Hi, everybody, and welcome to the masterclass today on career fairs, job fairs, and expos. My name is Katrina. I am the trainer here at Remo. If you know George, who's in charge of the C3EX team, the customer community and content, we're trying to find a better description for my job. So we're looking more of like a customer experience designer. And so I want to give you a little bit of background about me. I am coming to you from sunny San Diego, so it is 11:36 my time, and I fear there's a few people who may be late because I told them noon at the early morning session, so apologies in ahead. But I started out as an event host here in Remo this time last year, actually in May last year. I was volunteering. I'm a volunteer, the vice chair of the San Diego Veterans Employment Committee. And every year we host two of the largest employment job fairs for veterans in San Diego. And in October, we hold the largest for individuals with disabilities. And 2 weeks before we had to go live with our in-person event, the mayor of San Diego shut down everything. He took away our venue because we were going to go at one of the city's libraries. And we had to pivot very quickly, as many of you probably had to do, and do something virtual. We paired with the Employment Workforce Partnership Program here in San Diego, and we found Remo. And we, in 2 weeks, learned this entire platform and put together our first job fair. And then I started to do this as my business. I started to do job fairs, career fairs, expos as my business. And then in October, I came on board with Remo to share everything that I had learned while using Remo with everybody to create trainings and to create these masterclass. What this masterclass is a follow-up out of is a summit that we had last January at the end of the month. And we have been looking in the community to see what topics are popular. And a lot of people want to do virtual job fairs, career fairs, and expos. I personally have been talking about these since 2017. I worked for an organization called Hire Heroes USA, and it's partnering companies with transitioning service members because just because a service member wants to get out of the military in one location, that doesn't mean they're going to stay in that location and work. And they felt very disadvantaged because they wanted to move, but had to wait till they moved to get a job. So I've been looking at doing virtual job fairs for many, many years. So that's where this is one of my passions, is that now you can hire the right person no matter where they are in the world. You can recruit the right person for your college no matter where they are in the world. You're not limited anymore by having to travel to these locations to be able to have that interaction. So what I'm going to talk to you guys today, first of all, I want to let everyone know where you're from. So I see Jeanette is from SoCal as well. Tiffany, you're from SoCal. So there's a bunch of us here in SoCal. Awesome. So we got Brooklyn, New Jersey, Virginia, New York, UK, Ohio. I'm originally from Pittsburgh. So you're going to see my mug come into play a little bit. Oh, so we have New Hampshire. It's snowing. I actually left sunny San Diego, where it's perfect, to go into the mountains to do some skiing last week. So about their snow, I actually chased it. So, all right, everybody, welcome. One thing that I'm going to do, love this Steelers Nation. All right, go Pens. I have my people. All right. Okay, this is going to be an extra special, amazing workshop for you guys because I have my Steelers and my Penguins people in the house. So, all right. So what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about a few different things. I'm going to talk about some of the best practices that I learned from doing my job fairs and my career fairs, information that I gathered after each one to make it better, things that people requested where they were having problems, and things that I did to hack Remo to be able to use it more effectively for these specific case uses, because Remo is a networking platform, first and foremost. I am recording, Ian. Yes. It is a platform first and foremost for networking. And the basic rule of networking is it does not like you to be by yourself. And so that way you will be populated randomly. And for certain events like this, where you're having a good conversation or where you want to choose where you want to go, that can be a little bit of a challenge because all of a sudden I had people talking about, I was popped in the middle of an interview and I felt really awkward and I didn't know what to do. So after our first learning experience, we changed our floor plan and we changed our layout and we changed different aspects of our pre-event education. on how to be able to move things through effectively. So I'm going to, anything that I talk about that's a big learning point, I want you to reiterate it by putting it into the chat, because that's a really great way to reinforce your learning. So if you hear something and it's a point, and you put it into the chat, you type it out, then it kind of sticks a little bit more. If you have questions, if you'd like to put them into the Q&A section, it's going to be easiest for me to look at them in the Q&A. I can glance at the chat, but I'm going to be doing a lot with sharing my screen, and I'll be looking and demonstrating things from a different, perfect. Remo doesn't like you to be by yourself. Keep that in mind when designing your floor plan. You are going to get auto-populated. So lesson number 1 is you're going to get auto-populated. People are going to be auto-populating. So Misha, we're manipulating the way tables and seats are numbered to make sure people aren't dropped directly in private convos. And that's one of the first things that we're going to talk about. One of the most important things is understanding exactly what you want to get out of this event. If it's you hosting this for your own company, or you hosting it for your own college or university, that's going to be a little bit different than me hosting it for a variety of different employers, because each of those employers are going to have a different need. But what I've learned is that I give people few options. So I ask them, are you planning on doing interviewing live at this event? Are you only wanting to have an information booth at this event? So those things kind of help me pre-plan with what's going to go into my floor plan. So number 1 is, what do you want out of the event? What's the end goal from the event? So if you want to type that, what's the end goal from the event? And that's going to help you decide on a whole gamut of things based on the type of interaction that your audience is going to have with your speakers. So the first thing that I'm going to share is I'm going to share a couple of my floor plans. And again, these are not the end all be all. I want to change up a few things with my next go round, but I want to show you just some different ways. You can use regular stock Remo floor plans, because that's what I did with my first one. I just used a stock Remo floor plan. I didn't know about custom floor plans. I didn't know anything about kind of what I wanted to do. But once I got a little bit more into things, sorry, I'm trying to figure out which one of my tabs I need to open up. VEC job fair, because I don't see. Oh, wrong. Okay, there we go. So this is an example of one of the floor plans that I use for my career fairs and job fairs. And there's very specific ways that I worked with my designer to kind of lay it out. So if you notice, everything on this side of the screen, everything here is designated as a networking table. One of the first things that I've always learned is the first floor of my building, I always leave it as a landing space and a lobby networking area. The reason is people who are unfamiliar with your event are going to be coming and going all day. The challenge with the career fairs, the job fairs, your expos is that it's more of a rotational door. You don't necessarily have everybody that's rushing in at the very beginning because you have a set agenda. So people have varying levels of understanding about what they're getting into. So if my first floor is just basically a lobby, it allows people to kind of get in, get oriented. I have my help desk built in so people can come up. This was always manned on the first floor. People were able to understand exactly what's going on. Since I have done this event, I have downgraded my plan just because the nonprofit didn't have the funds to be able to pay for the higher level that they needed, but they'll plus up whenever they need it. But you can see I have multiple different sized banners, and I had 20 total. In the center is where I put a lot of my FAQs and information that I needed. On the side is where I put my links and my sponsors. So I really tried to keep the education separate. So again, if people are not there when my doors open, they're not going to get the benefit of my ability to do the housekeeping that I normally would. Like coffee's on the right, clean up your mess, the bathrooms are down the hall. So I use these four to provide education. So if they click on it, Floor 1, lobby, open networking. 2, and these are my employers on 2. These are my employers on 3, 4. So that's a creative use of your banners. And once we move up to floor 2, you notice it looks a little bit different. My tables have different names to them. And then this side is still just networking. The quiet area was something that I brought into consideration because I had a lot of feedback from my attendees saying, I just want to have a place where I can go and keep my camera and my microphone off because I don't want to network. I want to prepare for this job interview, or I want to be able to research this job just kind of on my own. So I created a quiet area, which is just one-on-one tables. Here I have 2-on-2 tables where if somebody just wants to have a private meeting with a friend of theirs, or if they have a job counselor who's working with them, like these are just free for all open tables. And my event actually happens on the other side of the screen. So the way that I explain it is that with this floor plan, we are walking into a hall, but we are floating on the ceiling looking down. So this is my information booth. So whenever you walk in to a job fair, you see a ton of tables with PDFs and information and pop-up banners. All of that stuff is on the table. So I had to recreate it by using the whiteboard. So on my whiteboard, I have the information that is very useful to a job seeker. In the beginning, another lesson learned was that it took me twice as long to teach an employer how to build their whiteboard than it did for me to say, you're going to send me your name, your website, your career website, any jobs that you have. Send that to me and I will build it for you. It went so much faster. So that's what I did. Everything that they would normally have on their table, I was able to rebuild here. You could put in videos. I'm able to put in just at a glance what some of their jobs were. And I kept the whiteboards very specific to job fair information because when they sent extra stuff, the job seeker wasn't interested in it. Anything that was unrelated, I weeded out because that was the feedback again from the job seeker, was that they didn't find that information useful. I also have these as one-on-one cue lines because again, when you're in person, you normally have 2 people at the table. Companies normally send 2 reps. You can see by body language what's going on. You can see if somebody is just kind of like browsing by going, I'm just going to take this piece of information, or I'm just going to take this like little koosh ball, or I'm just going to take this pen because I need a pen. Ooh, they have really good candy. Like the people who are not completely interested or just doing their drive-bys. You have another group of people who are there that they really just kind of want to look and they want to get a little bit more information. So they might engage somebody to say, okay, I know I've heard the name of this company, but can you tell me a little bit more about it? Things that are more general information. And then you have a third type of person who really wants to get specific because they know that company, they like that company, they want to work for that company, or they know the college, they know the school, they really want to talk one-on-one with somebody. And you can see that in their body language. You can see which type of person that they are. Online, it's a lot harder to do that. So the way that we broke down our event was at the top, we had the table, that's the information table, labeled as to which provider it was. At the bottom, we had the opportunity for one-on-one private discussion tables. And in the middle, in case there was overflow, I created single individual tables where people had to just move themselves down because the question we had was, if I just create a waiting table, how is the employer going to know who's next and jumping lines and things like that? So this was my initial solution. There is another feature called Get that had been rolled out since I had started doing these, where if I click on somebody's profile, I can pull them into my table. So that's another option if you don't want to do the wait line. Somebody can send a private message to the individual who is doing the one-on-ones and say, I'm next, and they can just pull them in that way. Another thing I'd like to correct on this is that with my screen size, you notice that those tables sit below my white bar, and a lot of people didn't see them. So I want to move them a little bit closer up here so that it looks like it's one table, but with a little bit of a definitive break line. So that's another lesson learned that I have. I'm going to jump back to you guys to see if there's a couple questions. You can move yourself to a different seat at the same table. No, if you double click on a table, it just kind of puts you somewhere, and that's kind of where you go. You can't necessarily move seats to the different feature. Jeanette, I take the free swag. Jeanette, I'm not sure if you have a question. I'm just kind of like scrolling up. Let me jump into the Q&A real quick. Did you do employer trainings or webinars leading up to your career fairs to educate employers, platform, whiteboard, etc.? 100%, Amisha. Yes, I did. And they were mandatory. People needed to pay to come to our event. And part of their registration was an agreement that they made that they needed their entire team or a representative from their team needed to attend one of my pre-training sessions. And as a pre-training session, I only gave them the information that they needed to know. Number one, the flow of events, what they can expect from the job seeker's journey. Number two, how to open a whiteboard, how to put a sticky note on the whiteboard. So all I taught them how to do was if they go into the whiteboard and they open it up, I taught them how to place a sticky note and how to be very specific about their language in the sticky note. Something like, Mark J is at lunch and will return at 2:30. I hate those signs that say, I'll be back in 15 minutes, because I don't know where that 15 minutes started. And somebody can have that sign up and be gone all day. So I asked them to be very specific if they had to step away for a phone call or had to step away for lunch or something, to give specifics. The other thing that they could do is to say Mark J is the rep for Cobham. And they left this pinned. So that is really all I taught them how to do with the whiteboards. Some of the big things with the whiteboards that my employers had a few things kind of wrapping their brains around is that the whiteboards are end user driven. They are not like something that I as an employer can open up and start presenting from. The end user has to open up the whiteboard and click on the video that they want to watch. They have to open the whiteboard and scroll in to see the job listing that they want. They have to do everything on their end initiates, but they can relay to the employer, oh, I just watched that video. And I use this big table, I use it for those people who really want more information about the company, but it's in a general sense. Once they start talking very personal about themselves, not everybody at the table wants to hear it. So that's when I suggest they go and talk one-on-one. Did you find any issues with having larger tables and conversations still flowing versus have 4 top tables? Again, this goes back into deciding the scope of what you would like to have for your event. Remember that as many people that the company sends, that is one less seat at the table that your job seekers or that your recruits are able to sit at. So I didn't find a lot of difference between having the larger tables and the smaller tables based on the feedback that was given to us. Again, I talked to the employers, let them know some of the limitations. Some of them sent multiple people. And so having the larger table was good because they were able to have a couple representatives there. But between 4, 6, 8, depending on exactly what you would like to have, any of those numbers work. For me, I found that the 4 top tables were forming a little bit too long of a line. 6 and 8 were kind of the sweet spot, depending on how many people I was expecting. Next, do you worry about new arrivals on the floor jumping in line? Yes, Allison, that was one of our big key concerns. And that's why we made the algorithms build so that the things on the left-hand side of the screen, so the way that the algorithms built in the custom floor plan is that these tables are supposed to populate first, followed by the one-offs, and then these 2x2s. Next, the one-offs here in line, followed by this, and these tables populate last in theory. You know, the algorithms don't like people to be alone, and every once in a while somebody went where they weren't supposed to. But in my training and in my advanced information for my job seekers, when you have a lot of people, it's kind of hard to find yourself. So instead of telling them as they move to a different floor to try to find their own avatar, I tell them take the avatar to their eye. So I happen to land here, but if I'm landing somewhere else and I see there's openings at this table, I tell them immediately find an open spot, double click immediately, and pull yourself to your eye. And that gets them out of any situation they're not supposed to be in. Let me go back here. And again, that's the other reason why I leave my first floor as completely open, because that's where people can make the decision point. They can look at that employer and provider location map and realize I need to go to the third floor. These guys need to go to the second floor. Somebody else needs to go to the 8th floor. So it allows them to have that separation so you don't have everybody jumping at the same time. Asia, you can move yourself to a different seat at the same seat. No, you can't. You don't really get to pick which seat you want to go to except for the one tops. So how do you move forward in line? They had to manually move themselves forward in line. So they really kind of had to pay attention. And that's why I had the arrows going. Oh, shoot. Sorry. That's why I had the arrows going down to indicate where to start and where to go from. So if I go into here, you'll see this is a one table. Oops. This is a one top. So I have, this is the problem though. Yeah. So I have to move myself down. This is my problem of being a host, is that the way that the, so if I click out here, they're all individual table. They're all individuals. So I just had to move myself down until I got here. Another way that you can do it is that you can have like a 3 top or a 4 top and just have them say the ARC SD weight line. Again, this is only going to go to me at the table, but this is an example, is that Katrina F 11:58 a.m. And this is where I'm saving my place in line. But this is an extra step of something you have to teach your employer who's sitting here, is that they just do the get feature and pull them in. I can't demonstrate get on myself, but I can demonstrate it once we go back to the tables. What types of resources do you recommend for employers versus job seekers? We want to have directors, but maybe a nice offer more through a resource block. Amisha, let me come back to that. I'm going to pull you up so you can ask me that one, because I don't quite understand exactly what you're asking for there. Do I utilize the timer to limit the time spent at an employer table and to keep the queue moving? I tell my employers, especially if they are down at the one-on-one, I tell them that they should have, if they're doing interviews especially, it should be rapid hire. It should be 7 to 10 minutes, no more than 7 to 10 minutes. If it's just an info and they're only doing info, I ask the employer to kind of keep an eye on the queue line and let them drive it. Because I can't be everywhere at once, and not everybody is going to be on the same timeline. So the big master timer like this one isn't necessarily going to work so much, because this timer that you just saw that went at the top of the screen right now, this is for your entire event. So I really, as part of the employer, onboarding or the advanced training that I do, I say, please be cognizant of the line. How is the custom floor plan built so the tables would populate in a specific order? I worked specifically with a Remo floor plan designer, because I tried to go into Illustrator and realized I was quickly over my head. And I valued my time more than the money that it took me to have this built for me, because the person I worked with understood the Remo floor plans inside, outside, backwards. He had been working with them for a year, and he understood how to layer the tables to kind of fool the algorithms. So I came up with this design on a janky paper. I had a friend of mine build a janky version of it in Photoshop that I could at least relay what I was talking about. And he took that information from me and built it into a real actual floor plan. And then he's the one that told me about like how to populate. So I worked, and this is why I always recommend, if this is your first, second time, you're not, even if you're great in Illustrator, I would still at least partner with or consult with somebody who has done a lot of Remo floor plans, because it has to pass a QA. And a lot of graphic designers can come up with like great ideas, but once you look at the intricacies and the number of layers, there's a couple places that it's pretty easy to go wrong. You can submit it to our QA, and they can kind of help you through it. So it's, again, it's up to you and your timeline and your budget. One thing I would recommend is don't work with somebody just off of Fiverr, or don't work with somebody off of Upwork who is not familiar with this, because you're going to end up spending more money, because you're going to have to go back and do a lot of revisions. Even with this, even with my clear idea and with some of the things that he did, knowing I had to go back and I did 2 revisions, because things when I was testing it didn't work how I thought it was going to work. Any reason why you choose to omit the text and video billboards at the top of my floor plan? I didn't, but the job fair hoo-ha is covering it. So let me go in here and pull it down. So here's my video, and here's my other. I'm going to jump over real quick. I'm going to show you my Expo floor plan. So one thing that I do is anytime I have buildings linked, I always do a graphic, or I will do something like this. So if it's where the employers are, I do a map of where the employers are. If it is going to a presentation hall, I will do my agenda. And then for the expo hall, because the expo hall was a little bit confusing by way of if I just put things on there, I do a visual map. People are much better with visuals. So if I move to this hall, it's going to look different, because again, I downgraded my plan. So a lot of these built-in floor banners are going to disappear. And before I get asked, I only had 1 floor for each of my exhibition hall booths, because I had my banners. They're all sponsor banners. They were ingrained into the floor. So I had 3 different halls for my expo. But inside each expo, I was able to sell this at a higher rate than I was able to sell this, because I gave them 4 different unique booths inside their exposition location. And with this floor plan, these 2 seats in the middle were built to populate first, because they were 2x2s. And then you can see with my sponsor, SDG&E sponsored this event. So I was able to brand all of my links. I didn't have this branded on the floor because I just bought an out of the box expo floor plan. But this is another way of how I branded my sponsors. So SDG&E spent a lot of money, and they sponsored this entire thing. So everywhere that I could put their banner on, I did. So when I move over here, this is what my exposition hall looked like, and my banners were in the middle. So some people wanted to just have their logo. Some people wanted to have a video that played. So there's a lot that I was able to do with that. But this, again, just to show you an idea of an expo, or we had 3 arms to this exposition that I did. 2 were for manufacturing, because I had enough manufacturers that I needed 2 unique halls. And the 3rd one was for all of our education sponsors. And each of the education sponsors, these guys had the different schools. They each had their own table inside the community college. So a lot of these were community colleges. So that's how I did that. Let me jump back into here. Sorry. I think there we go. I'm stuck. Do I worry about naming conventions or image uploads to profiles to designate different attendee types on the, do you worry about naming conventions or image uploads to profiles to designate different attendee types on the floor? Okay, I think I know what you're saying, Amisha. Please, when I pull you up, if this isn't what you're saying, because you and I have discussed this, I think I know what you're saying. So what I do is I tell my employers, do not put a picture of yourself. I would rather have you in your profile, and this is going to be 128 by 128, because if you see, if I change my thing, let me go, sorry, you guys are having to go on a little picture through my old desktop. So this is not the right logo. It's not going to look right because it's not 128 by 128. But just as an example, I would prefer to have everybody who is an employer designated by their company logo, and then they can put their name here. And then I also recommend, instead of a headline, I put your job title, because with the job title, it doesn't appear in your tiny little business card. So every one of my employers, I ask them to have their company logo. Everybody who is an event host or assistant, we have our organization logo. If they are a volunteer or their help desk, like we have a red indicator, or we'll have an indicator that says help desk. So using this without having to put your photo, I would leave the photos for the individuals who are your attendees. Some people aren't going to do it. They're just going to, leave it as the first initial. But that's my best practice for that, for your employers to designate. How far in advance do you have the commitments for exhibitors to allow the custom floor plan? We started planning out we looked historically at who had attended the prior year. We sent the initial invitations out about 3 months in advance, 2 months in advance. For the Expo, I had 2 months, and I knew like 10 was a good number, and it was based on how many seats I wanted to have. For this floor plan that you're looking at right now, I really knew what I wanted. After my first event and getting that feedback, I kind of visualized how I wanted to do it, because I wanted to recreate as more faithfully to an in-person event. So I kind of came up with this in my head. And this only took me a week to design out and connect with a designer, and 2 weeks I had it uploaded, and I had my next event like in 3 weeks after that. So again, having a rough idea about how many employers or providers you're going to have in your building based on what your plan is, that is the other big key. What does your plan allow the max for? And that'll tell you how many different buildings you have to have. Which brings up another point of, when I have to have multiple buildings, how do I group people? So what I do normally is, if they are my sponsors are going to have prime real estate. They are going to be here. So for this event, I only had 3 sponsors. From there, I went up and I did it alphabetically. So if you look here, see, so these are my sponsors, A, C, E, F, H, H. So I made it easy for my job seekers to be able to find people. And on this floor 9, these were support services. They weren't my employers. If I would have had a lot more support services, then this would have been my employer building, and all of my support services resources would have been in a second building. So I try to group things always from the perspective of your job seeker or your attendee. What is the most natural flow for them, and how easy do you think it would be for them to find what they're looking for? Follow when you did the multiple tables for each company in the exhibit, can you talk to all of them at once or just the individual table? No matter where you are in Remo, you can only talk in conversation mode to the people who are at your table in the manner in which you're in the like the Brady Bunch boxes. When you're at a table by yourself, you can't talk to, see from, or hear anybody unless you're using the chat feature. So with the chat feature, oh, sorry, Amisha, sorry. Sorry, I've been mispronouncing your name. I'm so sorry. The individual tables are just that. So if I'm at the one-on-one table, I can't see or hear anybody external to my table. And the same thing, nobody external to that one-on-one table where I'm having my interview, they can't see or hear us. So a couple ideas that other people have, if you have a lot of job seekers and you have a lot of companies who are planning to do on-site interviews and they want to, in advance, schedule people for those one-on-one interviews, it may be easier to create a separate side building that is just one-on-one tables. One thing that I would double check in advance is if you have, so because I do individuals with disabilities, we have individuals who have hearing impediments where they need to have a sign language interpreter to be able to go with them. And part of the problem with my floor plan with the one-on-one tables is that the sign language interpreter was not able to accompany. So I had to make that person an event host. So that way they had the special star and they would be able to go to those private one-on-one tables with the individuals. So for that day, we made the sign language interpreter, we made that person staff. They hung out at the help desk and anybody that needed their services were able to come and that person was able to go to any table, even the one-on-ones, to be able to provide that service. I'm going to scroll through the chat here for 1 second to see if I've missed anything in the chat. All right. I love the fact that you guys are like typing in the important stuff. Definitely, I would love to get the free swag. If you guys don't know about the get feature, I can't demonstrate it right now because I'm the only person that's in my event. But when we go down into table mode, I'll be able to demonstrate what the get feature looks like. So timer, can you go back to floor one? Oh, okay, Pamela, do you have a question about floor one? I can, let me do this. I'm going to, Pamela, you had a question about floor one, so I'll let you ask that. And then I know that you have a question. So I'm gonna let Pamela come up first. I'm gonna let Pamela, if you wanna come up and then.
Hey, Katrina, I didn't really have a question. I was a little bit late and just wanted to see what it looked like.
Oh, on floor one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely show that to you.
Thank you.
So floor one, again, for those of you who are new to Remo, whatever your custom floor plan looks like on floor one, that's what your custom floor plan is going to look like on floor two, floor three, floor four, floor five. The things that you have the ability to change are the actual table names themselves. So this is my green room area. So only I can go in here, my speakers can go in here, and people that I invite can come in here, but this is my green room. Everything here, and this is built in, this photo is embedded into the floor plan. So no matter what I do, I can't change this. But what I can change is if my employer here dropped out, I can change this into, say, for example, open networking. So that way, in case one of my employers drops out, I don't have to redesignate my entire thing. Because that happened once the very last second. I just didn't have time to redo my map. So I just turned their table into open networking because I didn't have time to resell it or anything. So this is how I'm able to brand on a multi-floor. Unfortunately, I cannot overlay the ARCS logo and Cox Communications logo and Eli Lilly's. I can't overlay their logos externally because that's what it would look like everywhere. And that's why the education hall is only one floor. So this can fit 100 people. Anything more than 100 people, then that's why I had the concurrent halls going at the same time, because I was only expecting 500 throughout the course of a day. So I knew, hedging my bets, that I was never going to have more than 100 people in here. But another reason to kind of tell your employers or your representatives not to send a ton of people, because the more people that they have in the event at their table, the less attendees can come, because every attendee counts against whatever your cap is for your event. Okay, so if you want to come up, and explain what types of resources do you recommend for employers versus job seekers. We want to have directors, but maybe nice to offer more thorough resource block. Can you just explain that? I just want to make sure I'm answering it correctly.
Yeah, and that could have been a typo as well. Just thinking about your resource block that you offer, we kind of modeled that too with our floor plan. I meant to say we want to have a directory, like what you had, an employer directory. And was wondering if you used anything on the job seeker side too, if you had any more information based on your experience.
Yeah. So one of the wonderful things that that I learned in November, that I had wished, or actually in October, that I'd wished I learned it from Success Labs, that I'd wished I learned earlier, is that you don't only have to upload static images and you don't only have to upload videos, you can upload GIFs. So what I do is I use the heck out of, Canva. So if you're not using Canva, Canva is free. If you use like $10 a month, you can pay to have the pro version and you can resize everything. So your banners, you can resize them easily. But what I do is I can't fit all the information that I need on one photograph. So what I can do is I can create a slide deck and export it as a preferred way that you say that word, GIF, however you prefer it. I know there's a lot of feelings about how it's pronounced, but my first thing is navigating the job fair. Number one, if they're not watching the videos, if they're not doing anything external that I've sent them in advance, or more to the point with a lot of these things, they find out about it like 20 minutes before it happens and they don't have time to kind of like review everything. So if you can see here, let me try to zoom in a little bit. Let me see if I can zoom in like 200%. So you can see these were the 4 things that I had in my FAQs. So troubleshoot my cam and audio, exit survey and prize drawing information, employer provider location map, and how do I meet the employer? So this is kind of like the flow. So if they didn't attend anything in advance, they didn't read anything in advance, at least front and center, I have the FAQ information that they need. And those of you guys who are cool will realize that I did it in black and gold, and that may be a nod to my hometown. From here, next, okay, if you're having issues, here's a quick shot about how to do that. Troubleshooting mic and cam issues. And all of these were put together on a slide deck. So that was one way I was able to give really good, solid information in FAQs. So I did that in lieu of being able to do everybody's gathered together. And here's our troubleshooting. So one was troubleshooting. One was like, how do you jump buildings? Like, what is the most important things that people need to know? The other thing that I do is I always take advantage of my welcome message. So the welcome message is the very last thing that people see before they really get to the meat of your event. And on my call to action, I use that call to action as yet another piece of information. So on my call to action, to go to the education hall, it says click and move to education hall. It's very clear what action I want them to take. For my slide decks, it's watch this slide show. So people know it's not just a static image. On my welcome message, it says watch this video first, like exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. And that welcome video is my housekeeping that I can't give like I would at the very beginning of a large summit, if that makes sense. Somebody's asking, when I say the green room, is that the same as the stage? No, it used to be called the stage in both situations, but it got confusing. So the green room in conversation mode is your waiting area. It's your prep area. It's where your speakers can gather to rehearse their presentation. So it's your backstage. Then once we get into presentation mode is where the stage. I am currently on the stage. I'm just left the stage. So we asked to have that very distinct language to not confuse people. Whenever you say the stage, you don't have to quantify, are you talking conversation mode or are you talking presentation mode? So you didn't do any welcome, opening script in presentation mode or closing. Yes, we did for all the employers. Because we had job seekers coming at all random times. We weren't able to do like a constant ongoing. And this is another good thing. If you have workshops, because I have done a lot of these where we have done workshops where we have had people come in and do resume writing workshops. We gave them a couple options. We could have done them at a small table, or what we did is that we created an entire different presentation hall, because again, we did not want anything to interrupt that day long, that flow of people being able to come and go as they will to the different employer tables. If we had to keep popping into presentation mode, then we would have completely wiped out the conversation mode for the job fair. So we had a presentation hall and we had a job fair hall. And in the job fair hall, in the expo hall, we did constant announcements saying 5 minutes, this presentation is in this hall with the link to the hall. 5 minutes, this presentation is in this hall. And that way we were able to really time it so that people were able to move between the halls and see the presentations that they wanted to see, while still being able to have the conversations that they wanted to have with the employers or with the resource providers or with the individuals who were recruiting for the schools. What types of, okay, yeah, so I did that, I think. How do you support an attendee with a visual disability at an event? So this is where it gets tricky. The folks with the visual disabilities, and this is why I always ask in my registration if somebody needs to have an accommodation. Right now, the platform doesn't work well with the JAWS or with some of the other readers. It does to a point, and that's where you need to have folks with visual disabilities really do a test. So I have an individual who attends pretty much every one of my events, and he has a visual disability. He's not completely blind, but he has to blow up everything on his screen because he's very, very sight visually impaired. But he can still see a little bit of some of the boxes. But what we did with him is that he would come to the help desk, and we partnered him with one of our volunteers who helped him navigate through where he wanted to go. Anything that he could do single click. And the same thing, we had somebody who had really severe rheumatoid arthritis and she could not double click. She could only single click. And again, this is where that get feature comes in handy. So when he was able to move, we told him where all of the employers were, and he told us what employer he wanted to go to. And we said, okay, so we need you to navigate over to floor 3. And he was able to click floor 3. And once there, we were able to pull him into each of the tables where he wanted to go and had those conversations. Conversely, if someone is able to and not able to have that level of visual cognizance, if they tell us what employers they want to go to, we can make the arrangements for the employers and have some of those one-on-one conversations. He was able. Some of your individuals who have visual disabilities have their own dedicated IT staff with whatever software that they're using. And those folks in advance were able to help him set things up. So if you have individuals with visual disabilities, it's just as important to find that out as far in advance as possible. The same thing with people who have hearing disabilities, so that you can arrange for some of those accommodations in advance. I always ask that on my registrations, and I give specific examples about examples of disabilities. Because other people, they're like, I don't know what you mean by accommodations. Like, I don't need a place to stay. So I try to be very clear with that. Follow on, when you did the multiple tables for each company in the exhibit, can you talk to all, okay, I already did that one, sorry. Green room, can you use different events to allow for different floor plans and still be able to connect people, say move from floor 1 to floor 3 that has certain exhibitors, and then floor 3 to floor 4? Okay, so again, whatever floor plan that you choose for floor 1, whatever you have embedded into that image as an embedded image, whatever you have as a sponsor banner on floor 1, That is exactly how floor 2 is going to look. That's exactly how floor 3 is going to look. That's exactly how floor 4 is going to look. If you need to have different looks, then you have a different building that has a different floor plan. So when I used my Expo floor plan, I needed to have 3 different floors. One thing that I did to differentiate them is that I had different colors for the floor. So let me go in here and show you this really quickly. If you notice, my education hall link was green. So whenever they jumped into the education hall, everything in the banners, everything was in a green color. My presentation hall was gray. My expo hall was red, and my expo hall 1 was so this is silver, and this is like the darker gray. What that did was, and let me share. I don't think it'll let me share this. No. Let me stop sharing and pick my other tab real quick. When I correlated it to the inside, if you notice, I had the Expo Hall 1 was gray, 2 was red, Education Hall was green. So that way everything corresponded. And if you look, the background of every sponsor banner was red in the red hall. The background of everything in this hall was that gray and then green. So I was able to use color coding so that people were able to designate, make sure that they were in the right booth, the right hall. Yes, can you have the same plan but different exhibitors, employers on each floor of the exhibition hall? On my exhibition hall, no, because my sponsor banners are embedded into each booth. So if I had Taylor Guitars on floor 1 in this hall, in this booth, Taylor Guitars would be on the second floor in that same hall. So I just created a new hall for each. When thinking presentation mode being limited by the building, do you suggest using YouTube live stream to go into presentation mode from the main hall and stream video to your connected buildings? Yes. So again, this is another great point. Thank you, Em, is that whatever you see in one building, and ignore that if you saw that the event will close in 2 minutes, it's not going to. That was a bug. I've extended the time for this event. When thinking about your presentation mode, just as you can only see and hear and talk to everybody at your table in conversation mode, that's the same thing with the building. When I'm presenting, this is its own unique event. When I link to another building, I am linking to a brand new URL. So it's a completely separate, it's almost as if I have my main presentation room in real life. I keep saying real life, this is real life, in an in-person event, but I have an overflow satellite room where they're in their own unique room. And if I don't have a way to get the information to them, it's a whole separate thing. So if that's like an overflow, you can use a stream like YouTube Live to broadcast this, what we're seeing here, into another one. Or what some people do is that they have 2 computers up, one in each hall, and they put the cameras kind of close together so they can simulcast. So that way I have this computer going into this building, I have this computer going to this building, and you always want to have staff in both, because what's happening in this building's Q&A, you can't see it if you're in this building's Q&A. What's happening in this building's chat, you can't see it in this building's chat. So when you're simulcasting to multiple buildings, that is one of the considerations to kind of take into consideration. Let me see. Ask about visual abilities and how we can work to support these attendees. So Megan, I hope that I answered that, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But the key is definitely advanced planning and having them identify that they have visual needs. And like I said, we can talk more about that down at the table. All right, and we're at time right now. If anybody needs to jump off, I know that's fine. You're welcome to jump off. If anybody has any specific questions about the job fairs or anything, I just want to double check just to make sure when my next event is, because I think I'm good to be able to stay for a little bit if you guys have questions at the tables, because I want to be mindful of everyone's time and not run over for everybody's. But if you have like individual questions, if there's something that I didn't cover, because I try to do a lot really quickly, and try to really give you guys some best practices, because I know that job fairs, career fairs, these are things that even when the world goes back to whatever its new normal is, this is going to be so vital, because why do I need to blow my entire department's budget sending you to like 16 different cities, even though I would like that because I love travel and getting those air miles, when I can, just do it this way. So, if there's any questions that you guys have, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, just like give me some thumbs up or raise your hands, or if there's something else that you want to see, any other topics that you guys have that you want to see, please message me. You mentioned asking questions during the registration. Are you limited in how many questions you can ask during the registration process? This is a good question. So about the registrations, I use a third-party registration software. I use generally Eventbrite. There's many reasons why. Number one, Remo's event registration process is just very cut and dry. There's not customization that you can do to it. Number two, I use Eventbrite also as a marketing tool, because when I'm having our job fairs kind of local in the area, or people are searching for job fairs, Eventbrite is a free marketing tool, because they have a bunch of events that they recommend for people who are looking for events. So I customize everything via Eventbrite. Other people use different registration portals, but that's one of the things that I know a lot of us do. And that's where you can get the custom information that you need to really have an informed event from the job seeker standpoint. And also I just like to brand all my messages, and Eventbrite and Hesummit, a couple of those are easier to do that. Dirk, also, I learned some new things from this. It's always helps seeing how other people run, organize their events. That is awesome. Thank you for that, Dirk. If you guys aren't inside the Remo Revolution community, I really highly recommend joining, because I have yet to see questions really just go unanswered. And if you want to talk about folks who, have run into the same questions and problems and issues that you have, the community is a great place to find those answers. It's where you can connect with me the easiest. Just message me right there. Yeah, so Allison says that they use Splash for registration. Would love to do a run through with folks. Huge Remo user sandbox for a day. Everyone gets a role and we work it out. That's awesome. And that's something that you can create and get everybody on board inside the community. Message me and we can see if we can help organize that for you guys as well, to get people to come to your run throughs, because we have a lot of Remo users who are super happy to help do that. If you want, have a safe testing group, we have a lot of people who'd be willing to do that. So at this point, I am going to shut down conversation or presentation mode and go into conversation. If anybody wants to see how to do the get feature, if you're not familiar with that, the get feature is super saving for me in my job fairs and in my career fairs, especially when it comes to organizing the queue. And that can give you a few different options about what you want to do for your layout. So thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Let me know inside the community what other masterclass topics you'd like to have, because we're formulating March and April right now. We're going to do 4 of these events every month. Some master classes, some fun classes. Tomorrow we're having a bingo night. And that's actually, it's going to be bingo afternoon for me. You can register for that inside the community, but we're going to try to show you how you can run a presentation mode style event inside conversation mode. So fingers crossed, it's going to work how we anticipate it working. And it's going to be fun bingo. Yep, we are doing bingo tomorrow. I will send you the link to register. if you want to do bingo. It is tomorrow at 5 p.m. Pacific. So we'd been asked to put that for the APAC time zone. So it's a little bit later for some folks, but if you want to come to our bingo night, here is the RSVP link. So, all right. Thanks, you guys. Best practices for sponsors and training sponsors. Okay, Derek, I will take that note. Masterclass, best practice. All right. Thank you, guys.